Hey guys, it's me. I was going to try to find an ed puzzle for today, but I could not find a good enough one that would work for what I'm trying to get done. So I just decided to go ahead and make a video for you guys. We need to talk about diction in literature and just kind of like what it is, how it's used, what the different kinds are, that kind of thing before we start Uncle Tom's Cabin. Because Uncle Tom's Cabin is full of what are called colloquialisms, which is a big word. It's hard to pronounce, even for me, but it is a type of diction. So we're going to kind of break down the different types of diction today and talk about what they are and how they're used so that you can identify it when we read Uncle Tom's Cabin and be able to explain the meaning behind certain things that the author and the characters are saying. So without further ado, let's just talk about it. First things first, you need to know what diction is. Diction is the author's choice of words to convey tone or meaning. And what they do with this is they can use it in their narrations or they can use it in the dialogue of their characters. Harriet Beecher Stowe, the lady who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, uses a wide variety of diction in that book, both with herself in her narrations and with her characters. So before we talk about what diction is, it's important that you know the foundations of certain words. Now, words can be divided into two categories based on their meaning. They've got what's called a denotative meaning. Denotation is the literal dictionary definition of a word. Okay, so it's one of those words that if you look it up in the dictionary, you'll find the exact term and what it means. And usually authors, if they're writing nonfiction work, are going to use denotation most likely because they don't have to embellish their words to make them sound prettier or to convey a deeper meaning. They just want to be straight to the point. The other type is connotation. Now, connotation is the feelings and emotions associated with a word. So any kind of word that has a symbolic meaning or a deeper meaning to either the reader or the writer is going to be something grouped under the category of connotation. So I've used the example here in the middle of the screen of a heart to kind of give an example that we're going to talk about on the next page. So the word heart can be divided into two meanings based on its denotation and its connotation. So let's take a look at what they are. Well, we know that a heart, an actual heart, like this beautiful picture that's showing up right here, is a denotation. So the definition of a heart: a hollow muscular organ that pumps the blood through the circulatory system by rhythmic contraction and dilation. In vertebrates, there may be up to 4 chambers, as in humans, with 2 arteria and 2 ventricles, or atria, sorry. Now, that's the dictionary definition or the denotation of the word heart. Now, writers, specifically creative writers or fiction writers, like to use the word heart for its connotative meaning. So when we think of the connotative meanings of the word heart, we think of, oh, the heart is a symbol for love, emotion, caring, passion, that kind of thing. You talk about your heart when you want to talk about things that you love or that you're very impassioned about. So one example of a sentence that I've got here is, he broke my heart when he cheated on me. Okay, well, if you're writing this in a sentence form, you are most definitely not talking about the denotation of a heart. Someone, when they cheat on you, if you really care about them, is not going to physically break that organ inside your body that pumps blood everywhere. Okay, this isn't Indiana Jones. No one's going to stuff their fist into your chest and grab your heart and steal it and rip it to shreds. Okay, that doesn't actually happen. What the author's trying to say is that this person, by use of connotation, has broken their ability to trust, feel love, or feel impassioned. Okay, so they're not actually ripping your heart out. They are making it to where you just don't feel those things anymore. That's the difference between denotation and connotation. So, another example that I can think of that's not on this slide, but it is something that I can use to kind of give you guys a better idea, is the word brother or sister. We know that the denotation of the words brother and sister are male or female sibling. Okay, kind of boring, very bland. You would use it if you're filling out an application and someone wants to know, do you have any siblings? Yes, I have a brother. Yes, I have a sister. Connotation for that word or those words is somebody who you trust very deeply, that you care a lot about. You guys can probably relate to this. You've probably got best friends that you've maybe either known for a long time, or maybe you guys have done a lot together and it's made them feel like a brother or sister to you. A lot of times in books, you'll hear, like especially like with war books or war movies in this case, you'll hear someone say, oh, we were brothers in arms, or we were sisters in this. Okay, that's using connotation to the fullest, because whoever's saying that is saying that this person isn't literally related to me, but they have become my brother or sister just because of how much that we've done together and how much we care for. Okay, so another example of connotation at work is when we use it with slang words. So this slang word's kind of outdated, but I figured I would use it because you're probably all familiar with it. The word crib. Okay. Crib's denotation is literally talking about the thing you put babies in to sleep. Sorry, that was my dog. The thing that you literally put babies into sleep. So like a bed for an infant. The connotation of the word crib, at least the way we use it in slang, is to talk about someone's house. So that's kind of another example of how connotation works. It means one thing, and that's its denotation, like its actual literal meaning. But then to us, the people who are reading that word or hearing that word, it could mean something completely different. So a lot of it kind of depends on context and what are called the 3 types of diction, which I am hoping is on the next slide, but I don't remember. Yes, they are. Okay, so the way you break apart what a connotation is, you got to look at what kind of diction is being used. There are 3 main types. 2 of them you guys are familiar with because we talked about it before. The third one's kind of new. So we have, first of all, informal diction. And that's the kind of language we use when we talk to like friends or family, or, you know, if you're writing a letter to somebody that you know, or you're sending a text message. It's basically just conversational tone, okay? Just casual conversation. You can say pretty much anything. That's what informal diction is. Now, formal diction is a different kind. It's slightly elevated. So when you elevate your language to impress an audience, that's called formal diction. And we see this whenever you guys write academic essays. You'll use it when you go in for job interviews, when you start filling out applications and submitting essays for college applications, you'll use formal diction because you want to appear to your readers as if you are a professional. So you're not going to use slang. You're not going to use contractions like can't, won't, and don't. You're going to use cannot, will not, do not, because that's the way you use formal diction. You are trying to appear more professional. Now, the third category is colloquial. And colloquial, if you have not guessed by the picture, is referring to diction that you use specifically in your own culture, maybe your own area of the country. You're probably thinking, yeah, but we're in the United States and this is Copan and no one uses colloquialisms. Yes, you do. So I'm going to be showing you some examples of exactly what I mean after we finish up with informal and formal. So first things first, informal diction. By definition, informal diction is conversational language commonly used between friends and family members and in other settings where elevated language is not required. So like I said, it's when you're in a comfortable position with whoever you're talking to, you use informal diction. So I don't know why this screen is showing my text all messed up, but this is what it's supposed to say. The informal version of this sentence says, I legit thought I was going to get fired when he called me into his office. Okay, you guys use the word legit all the time. It's slang. We know what it means. This is how you would talk to somebody if you're sending a text about something, or if you're in a conversation with one of your friends and talking about something bad that happened at work. Well, in formal diction, when you try to elevate your language to become more impressionable, you would take that same sentence and you would embellish it a little bit. You'd say, I had a legitimate concern that I would be terminated as my supervisor asked for a meeting with me in his office. Okay, not the way you're going to say that to your friends by any means, but it's something you might say if you're going to a new job interview and your boss at this new place wants to know what happened at the last job. You could say that. You would not say the informal version because this person doesn't know you yet. Okay. So back to formal diction. So formal diction, as we just discussed, is the kind of language you want to use when you're trying to sound more professional. So it says the use of sophisticated language without slang or colloquialisms. This elevated type of language is often found in professional texts, business documents, and legal papers. It is also the kind that you are going to use on academic essays. So when you do formal diction, you want to cut out any slang, you want to cut out any colloquialisms, you want to cut out anything that makes you appear more informal because you are trying to impress somebody when you use formal diction. So an example of another informal quote that we're going to turn into a formal one was, I quit my last job because my boss was a jerk and didn't let me text on the job. Okay. You are not going to say that in an interview with a new place that you want to get employed at. Instead, you're going to say the more formal version. I left my last place of employment because my supervisor did not approve of my using a cell phone while working. That makes you sound more professional, and it makes you sound like you know what you're talking about. So we want to cut out any of the extras whenever we're doing formal diction because you want to sound, like I said, again, more professional and more reserved. Okay, less conversational because you don't know these people. And even if you did know these people, there is a reason present why you have to speak to them with respect. That is where we use formal diction. Okay, so now to get on to colloquial diction. Colloquialisms, or colloquial language, is the linguistic style used for casual communication. It is the most common functional style of speech and is sometimes dependent upon cultural norms and geographical familiarity. Gosh, I can't say that word either. So colloquialisms basically boil down to not only the slang that you use, but kind of how you talk to people based on where you live or what time period you live in. Colloquialisms change throughout time. So we're going to get into that here in a second. But just to give you kind of an example of what a colloquialism is, I've got some examples here. First of all, y'all. We say y'all all the time because we are pretty much in the South. Southern colloquialism, y'all, is most notable in the Southern United States. We say y'all when we're talking about a group of people, talking to a group of people. If you go further north, like Minnesota and Wisconsin, all the way into Canada, you're going to hear some people say "a" whenever they're trying to either confirm what they heard was true, or if they're like trying to get your attention, they'll say, "Oh, so how about that Super Bowl game, eh?" They'll say that at the end just to make sure you're paying attention or to kind of produce some kind of reaction into whoever they're talking to. We don't say that down here. They say it up there. That makes it colloquial because it's really just kind of relative to that general area. Some more examples over here on the right. Coke. If you go deep south enough, anywhere you go when you go to a restaurant, you can hear somebody ordering a Coke, and they may not be actually talking about Coca-Cola. A lot of deep Southern people will use the word Coke to describe any kind of soda pop. So that is one example. Here in Oklahoma, the majority of us will say pop when we're talking about the same thing because that is what we use around this part of the country. Further north, they're going to say soda or soda pop because that's just another example of a colloquialism. Depends on where you're from. On the next one, let's talk about, okay, so now I've got some examples for you guys. Love examples. Colloquial diction in real time. I've got some videos of different areas of not only the United States, but the world and their slang terms that they use. And especially with examples 2, 3, and 4, since they're in different countries, you will be able to see not only what their slang terms are, but how they say certain words, because it is just interesting to listen to people from other countries talk. Half the time they're speaking English, but you can't really even understand what they're saying because their accent, and accents are also a part of colloquial diction, because when you talk in an accent, you are revealing to people where you come from. So it's considered part of a colloquialism. So I've got all these links up here. I'm going to provide each of those videos on Classroom because I only have a certain amount of time to record here on this video. So I will put these clips up for you guys on Classroom because you are going to have to watch them in order to do the homework assignment. So I'll put those up and you guys will be able to watch these and respond to them, which is what I have kind of posted as an assignment later. So Anyway, this is talking about colloquial diction assignment number 1, which is already on Classroom. As I was just saying, you're going to have to watch those YouTube videos that I've posted to kind of get an idea and to be able to respond. So your first part of your assignment, everything that you're going to be doing to respond to this video is on one Google Doc. So the first part, it says on the Google Doc provided, I want you to take I need to edit that one section of any of the videos used in the previous slide and write out 5 seconds worth, 5 to 10 seconds is probably what I should say, of language of the video you choose. You must write it exactly as it sounds in the video, so your spelling will not be correct. The idea is to get the sound of those words onto paper so you can see how colloquial diction works in writing. Very important for Uncle Tom's Cabin because there's a lot of slave language in there, and you're going to be reading it on paper and you're going to have to say it out loud most of the time to understand what they're trying to say. So my example I took from video 2, which was the Scottish slang, and I just took a 7-second blip of what he said. And what I did was I wrote down what he said exactly, and I wrote them in the way that it sounds, not exactly what it's supposed to say, but just how his voice sounds. So if you'll notice, he said, hold your weast, which I guess it means shut up because that's what he said. But when he says shut up, he says shut up. It's not really like one word like we say it, so I've written it as 2 different words. When he says probably, he doesn't really pronounce the B, so probably is what I put there, P-R-O-L-Y. Sorry, you can't see this very well. It kind of sucks. And then he says, sorry, I'm trying to organize my screen here so I can see everybody. He says, what I should probably do right now, because he's Scottish, and Scottish people pronounce their O's weird. So now is not now, it's no. As I am keeling my career, not killing, but he pronounces it like keeling, K-E-E-L-I-N-G. That's what you guys are going to do on your assignment. You're going to write it out exactly as it sounds, not as how it's supposed to be spelled. Okay, hopefully that example is good enough for you. Okay, now, colloquial diction in Uncle Tom's Cabin is a different topic. Like I said, it's slave language. So the slave dialogue, sorry, that was my dog. The slave dialogue is the number 1 reason why people complain about reading this book, because they can't crack the code, as I call it. The slaves, when they speak in this book, are speaking Southern slave colloquial dialogue, and it is spelled exactly how it sounds. So that's why I had you do the previous exercise to get ready for that. I'm going to put up some examples for you guys here in just a second so that you can see what exactly I'm talking about. All right, so what I've done here is I've given you guys an example of a quote from Uncle Tom's Cabin in one of the first chapters we're going to read. And it is a quote that is a example of the slave dialogue that I told you guys you're going to have a hard time kind of getting through. So I have got it down here in red just to show the difference between what I'm saying and what the character is saying. So this is a quote from a character named Aunt Chloe, and it appears in one of the first chapters we're going to read in a chapter called An Evening in Uncle Tom's Cabin. It's the first chapter we actually meet Uncle Tom. So this is taking place inside of their cabin, and they're getting ready to have a meeting among the slaves of the plantation. Now, when they called it meetings, what they meant was they were pretty much having like church gatherings inside their cabins. All the slaves would come by and they'd get together. It was kind of like a party. They would have food and drink and all that kind of stuff. And at least one person would lead kind of like this discussion. So anyway, they would come together and they would kind of, they couldn't read. So if there was a slave who could read, that was a very rare thing to happen. So most of the time what would happen is they would sing hymns that somebody may have made up or that were passed down from one family member to another. They would recite stories from the Bible that they could remember being read from other people, that kind of thing. So anyway, that's kind of the context of when this quote takes place. All right, so like I said, in red is the quote from the character Aunt Chloe. So I'm going to read it in my best Southern dialect that I possibly can, but this becomes very difficult. A lot of times in class, we're going to listen to the audiobook just because that narrator does a wonderful job, and I sometimes even still struggle with some of this. But so in red, Aunt Chloe says, "Most done, Master George. Brown and beautiful. Real lovely brown. Let me alone for that. Mrs. let Sally try to take some cake the other day just to learn her. She said, 'Oh, go away, Mrs.' said I. 'It really hurts my feelings now to see good victuals spilt that our way. Cake rise all to one side, no shape at all, no more than my shoe. Go away.'" So in that quote, as I'm going to be saying on the next page, and I'm going to make a little correction down here because I noticed it as I was reading it aloud. See, that's what happens. I'm going to add this here because technically Miss Chloe says this next line, not the mistress. So anyway, so reading that line out loud, it's easier when you can hear it than just sit down and read it and try to say what's being said. But what you guys are going to do on your version of the assignment is what I've kind of done here in green. I've taken what Aunt Chloe said in red and I've put it into more formal diction so that it can be understood by everybody. So what I've taken her quote to say is, "Almost done, Master George. It's browning beautifully. Now leave me alone for that." It means change the subject. That's what that means. "The plantation mistress, owner's wife, tried to say or have Sally make cakes the other day just to let her learn or to teach her. When she did, the mistress got frustrated, and I told her, 'Go away. I'm offended by the way you waste all the ingredients that way.'" She's talking to the other slave who's screwing up the cake, by the way. "The cake is only rising to one side. It's got no shape at all. No more shape than my shoe does. Leave." So Aunt Chloe is expressing anger, and she's doing it in her colloquial diction. So that is your job as the reader, is to read it out loud and to kind of put it into your own words so that you can understand it better. But it gives the character context, and it gives them a little bit more of a personality than if we just left it like that, or if we put it in our own language. Like if I had written Uncle Tom's Cabin and I had written that quote in green instead of the way she wrote it in red, it would not give Aunt Chloe near the personality that she deserves in the writing. So hopefully you guys understood how I did that, because what you're going to do is I've given you 3 quotes from the book in that same chapter that we just read from. Now 2 of these quotes, the first 2, are mainly Aunt Chloe, and then the third one is actually a quote from Aunt Chloe's children who are very young. So what I'm going to have you guys do is in red, kind of like what I just did, you're going to read it out loud on your own and try to figure out what she's saying, because it's easier if you say it out loud than if you just try to read it silently. But you're going to take what I've written in red on your Google Doc that's attached to this assignment on Classroom, and you are going to put it into your own words. Try to make it as formal as you can, kind of like what I did, and you can also refer back to what I did to try to remember how to do this. So 1, 2, and 3, you're just going to put it in your own words. You don't talk like this, I don't talk like this, but when you read it out loud, it makes sense what they're trying to say. You just have to kind of put it into nowadays language so that other people can understand. So that's what part 2 of your assignment's going to be. And then that way, by the time we get to this chapter when we read the book, it'll be easy peasy. Won't have to even question it. So the last thing I have to say before I go about this topic is you got to remember that Uncle Tom's Cabin, first of all, I didn't tell you guys this, but Uncle Tom's Cabin is actually a banned book. Many schools around the country will not allow teachers to teach this book because of the language mainly. The language that's used, and because of the topic itself. I, however, have been teaching it. This is now the 7th year, and I absolutely love it, and I hope you guys love it too. But there is something that I need to warn you about, and that is, granted, this book was written during the antebellum slavery period. So it is very common for certain words that we don't use anymore to slip their way into the pages. One word in particular that you've probably expected to hear in a book like this is the N-word. We don't use that nowadays. I won't use it when we read out loud in the book. I will not say it out loud. It appears just about every single page in this novel. because it was written during the 1850s and it was a very common word back then for everyone to use. We don't use it anymore. So if we get to a point in class where we're reading this out loud and you have to come across that word and you don't want to say it, you do not have to say it. I will not make you say it. There are other certain words in there that are considered curse words by today's standards, but weren't back in the day. When we get to those words in the book, you don't want to say them, don't say them. Skip it over, find a substitute word for it if you need to, which is what I try to do, and just move on. Okay. However, I will not tolerate anybody using that word outside of reading the book, because you guys know better than that. You're almost adults now. You know when to censor yourself from saying certain things. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's going to appear a lot. You don't have to read it if you have to read out loud. If you do read it, I'm not going to hold it against you because it's in the actual book, but do not use it outside of reading. So that was my last request. And with that, I'm going to put this all in your hands and let you guys finish that assignment for today. It'll be due by midnight. And hopefully you guys enjoy the videos that I've attached. Remember, part 1, you do have to watch all those videos that I have attached to Google Classroom so that you can pick one to translate, or not translate, but pick one to write down the colloquialisms in for part 1. And then part 2, you're answering, or you're translating the 3 lines from the book that I've written in there for you, just like what I did. Remember, you can refer back to this video at any time if you need help or guidance on how to do any of the parts of today's homework. And with that, I will leave you guys to it. Good luck. Hopefully we can start this book soon. Hopefully we will not be stuck at home for very, very long. See you guys later.